story is about a group of sons of Greek immigrants who lived in the United States. The 122nd Infantry Battalion, often called the Greek Battalion, was founded in 1943 by executive order of President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Virtually all of its members were American-born sons of Greek immigrants. And the battalion was designated the 122nd to commemorate the 122nd anniversary of Greek independence, which followed 400 years of Ottoman rule. By August 1943, the 122nd had completed 7 grueling months of infantry training at Camp Carson, Colorado, under the superb leadership of Major Peter D. Planos, the very first Greek-born West Point graduate. At the request of the Greek government in exile, a Greek operational group was formed with volunteers recruited from the battalion in February 1943. The recruiting officers advised the battalion that they were seeking volunteers for a covert, hazardous mission and that the casualty rate was expected to be very high. When, according to Major Planos, the battalion discovered that this covert hazardous mission was to be in Greece, all of the battalion volunteered. With additions, rejections, and further training, nearly 200 enlisted men and officers were ready for foreign duty by early 1944. At that time in Greece, the armed resistance was by the Andartes, Greek guerrillas living in the mountains. Withdrawal of the 80,000 German troops who had occupied Greece for several years was foreseen, and plans were based on delaying, harassing, and making this withdrawal as costly for the Germans as possible. 8 U.S. operational groups and a British unit, the Raider Support Regiment, would work with the resistance to accommodate the plans. USOG-1 entered Greece on April 23, 1944. The second group, which was commanded by First Lieutenant John Giannaris, with 20 specially trained troops under his command, USOG-2 left Monopoly, Italy, aboard a British landing craft on the night of 16th of June of that year, and entered Greece near the islands of Paxi and Antipaxi on the 18th of June. They loaded their supplies and ammunition on mules brought by the Andartes, who met them, and set off for the village of Paphos, just north of Lamia. The trip took them 14 days through the plains of Thermopylae and over arduous mountain trails through German-occupied territory. Paphos was to be their base of operations while in Greece, and it was near the village of Niziro, now called Agiostephanos, the dried-out lake bed of Lake Chinas that contained the mass grave of 103 Greeks who had been machine-gunned to death in retaliation to Andarte actions against the Germans. I need to say here that although Giannis remains quite healthy, over 90, today in Chicago, he says that he decided on that day in June of 1944 that he would one day be buried together with those 103 souls in the dried-up lake bed at Nazir. I told Giannis last year that my organization would render the military honors at his funeral. USOG-2 had been in Greece less than a month when they received a call from the British to their west that the enemy was sweeping through the plains of Thermopylae, destroying villages and killing all the Greeks who got in their way. Group 2 made a forced march of nearly 80 kilometers to reach Karpanisi, where they assembled more than 200 children, women, and elderly men who were helplessly surrounded by the marauding enemy. Group 2 saw that the evacuees were escorted from Karpanisi through Makrokopi and Kastri to Paphos, now called Mesohori, where they remained safe until the end of the war in Greece.
USOG-2 and the Papas Andartes had great success against the enemy until the night of September 8th, 1944, when an operation against a well-guarded stretch of railroad, German machine gun mowed down the unit's forward scout, technician 5th grade, Mihalis Tsermoulis. In his efforts to reach the fallen Tsermoulis, John Giannaris stepped on a German landmine. He knew that he was mortally injured, and he ordered his men to evacuate the area rather than stay and face their own destruction. I should note here that technician 5th grade Mihalis Tsermoulis is another of the spirits at this table. Remember, but that's not the end of the story. Giannis evaded the Germans searching for his expectedly dead body by hiding in one of their own ammunition crates until the search for his body was suspended. He then spent the rest of the night crawling and dragging his bloody body over rocks and shrubs until he was found the next morning by 2 shepherd girls who brought a village doctor. The doctor patched him up as well as he could, and local women and children moved Giannis from village to village, always at night, until they reached a clandestine British airfield near Karditsa. A small single-engine aircraft flew unescorted from Italy and evacuated Giannis to hospital, where he began a several-year-long series of surgical procedures to remove more than 200 pieces of shrapnel from his body. He keeps those pieces in a mason jar on his desk at home to remind him of all the Greek villagers who saved him from certain death at the risk of their own survival. But that's not the end of this story either. First Lieutenant Nicholas Papas of Group 3, who had landed in Greece with USOG-3 in August and had been operating north of Larissa, took command of Group 2 on September 25th, 1944. It was he who, in mid-October 1944, commandeered 2 British trucks and led Group 2 on a drive to Athens. There was no Ethniki highway then. They were, in fact, the first uniformed American military men to set foot in Athens during World War II. Nick Papas, at the age of 92, visited Greece last year to donate the medals he had earned for his service with USOG Group 2 to the Athens War Museum. Nick was interviewed on camera for the U.S. Library of Congress Veterans History Project right here in Athens on this very campus on the 24th of September, 2005. I spoke to Nick via telephone recently, and he told me that that day was one of the most memorable days in his post-World War II life. Neither Nick nor Giannis could be here with us, but both send their regards, and Major General Giannis Daphnis, Hellenic Army, retired, the man who accepted the medals on behalf of the War Museum and all the people of Greece, is here in the audience with us tonight. The end of the story, though, is that the September 24th interview was conducted by DRE College students and staff who are participants in VHP Greece, the only official partner of the U.S. Library of Congress Veterans History Project outside the United States, exactly 60 years and 364 days from the day he assumed command of USOG-2 in Mesochorion. That's the end of that story.